So welcome everyone. I am Laura Morrison, past president of WCA, and I would like to welcome the Alabama chapter members who have put together Labor of Love. Our panel co-chairs are Amanda Banks and Jessica Nunno, and the panelists are Anna Sue Courtney and Sylvia Bowyer. So I am going to turn this over to Amanda to get it rolling. So thank you everyone for pulling this together.
And thank you, Laura. I really appreciate this. We're excited to share this work with you. I will tell you a little bit about the Alabama chapter, and then I will hand it over to the team that actually made all of this happen for them to present the work to you. So if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of pictures. And all right, is everyone able to see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So our chapter has been around since 2015. We started out at really just a small group of artists who are interested in furthering women's art here in Alabama. And it has since grown to 60 members actively. We host exhibitions every year. We hold gatherings, and we even offer occasionally internships and small grants for artists. So our community is really wonderful. We really are very supportive of each other and enthusiastic about the work that we all do together. The photos that you see here are from a couple of our exhibitions and also a member gathering that we did where we all went to a member's studio and did a pottery painting together. It was very special. So this is kind of who we are and what we like to do. And we have put together an exhibition that's really very unique that I will let Anna Sue explain. Take it away, Anna Sue.
Okay, this is the Labor of Love is a folio. It's a hand-bound box by oh, they can't see it anyway.
Yeah, they can't
Yeah, it's a hand-bound box.
Yeah. I have another slide there.
Inside is work by 20 artists. Oh, she got it up there. And so they're 20 member artists, and it's that intersection of where your work and your life are connecting. So each page is a comment about how each woman thinks along those lines. Besides doing the folio, one of the things that we did was I put the layer on it of performance. I've been doing some performing with book objects, and so there's also a component to this where the pages come out and they can be in performance. They could also be displayed conventionally on a wall or in other environmental sculptures or pedestals, you know. So this is the cart that we did. That's a sculptural installation of it. It's an old woman's grocery cart turned into the skeletal structure for the book. And I perform in and around it. There's a series of pages from inside the book from different artists. And
then next we'll just jump into the art.
okay. Sylvia, do you want to? Sylvia is actually here, the person that did this page.
Yeah, I based because the organization had been around 50 years. I thought, oh, 72. So I went and got magazines, basically Family Circle and Good Housekeeping, because I was 16 in 1972. So this was relevant because this was one of the many adolescent years in that era that shaped the rest of our lives as far as ideology. And I made a collage, well, a number of collages, because that's my tendency. The collages that are in the folio I made by shredding and weaving the color copies taken from these magazines, and also from the Wound of Christ in the prayer book of Bonnie de Luxembourg, because again, part of what I thought was an overarching ideology for me is a lot of the ideas that one sees in Christianity as far as roles and how we are to organize our lives. And the reason I used these images and shredded them and wove them in the type of grid is because the market myths and the class bias about domestic work and caregiving complicate my belief system in so many ways that it's not organized in a way I find readily available at any given year as the longer I've lived. And so I wonder what environment and market economy have done for many of us to understand labor of love and sacrifices and the entanglement that happens in the weaving of our existence and the way the market influences us as far as how we get through the day. So this particular piece was titled The Market We've Made. And it's, like I said, a woven collage from these magazines. So I think that pretty much explains my intent.
Thank you, Sylvia. And Jessica has been able to join us. She was having some problems with the connection. So I will pass it over to Jessica if you are ready to show the video that we've created.
Yeah, I do have the video ready to go. I apologize. Zoom tried to update on me as soon as I opened my computer. So of course, right? So along with what we did for this particular project, we made a video involving the performance aspect that Anna Sue mentioned. So it shows clips of Anna Sue's performance mixed with, we did interviews with many of the artists that participated in the Folio series. And we have a lot of these statements put together as well that go with the artists who are unable to do interviews. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen so that you guys can see the video. Throughout it, we have like the ability to kind of treat this like a commentary, like you guys see like on, say, the bonus features of DVDs or movies, where you can talk like over the video if you have questions about something, or there's a comment you want to make, or the exhibitions team that I'm working with, if they have something that they want to add about the process and you know, what we went through making this particular series. All right, can everyone see that okay? All right, here we go.
Does anyone have audio?
I can't hear the audio.
Can you guys hear it at all?
No.
There may be a sharing setting. You may need to request to share your audio as well.
Let me see.
Oh, Beverly, you can hear it?
Oops, that jumped ahead. Can you guys hear it now? Yeah.
No, I can, it's very, very muffled. We can't hear the words.
Okay. Bear with it. This one's audio was a little bit low. The next one, I believe, is a little bit louder. So we'll see if we can hear this one. Do you hear the ringing bell? Yeah. One more time. Okay.
Now,
Hi, I'm Sonia Rasso. I'm also an artist here at Lone Mill. That I made the clamshell box to house all of the art pieces of the labor of love. So the first thing was I was given the image by Jessica, which I had a polymer plate made. I'm also a letterpress printer. So I printed the image onto book cloth. And then made the clamshell by measuring the amount of material that was in here, all of the portfolio. So unlike just having some kind of a book board or a very plain one, we wanted to house it in a beautiful case. And you can see this kind of functions as a book itself, with room for you to grab the portfolio without damaging the art. Once again, it just, again, it's very easy to open and close the book, and then to be able to be stored or housed as it travels around for different exhibitions.
Hello, my name is Jessica Nunno. I am the illustrator and designer of the insert pages that went inside the Labor of Love folio, as well as the cover. What I did for my piece is I created a woman using vector design, which is different from the other illustrations that you guys are going to see later on in the portfolio. Vector design is something that's done on the computer, and it's done with a mathematical sequence of nodes that allow an image to be able to scale up and down really easily without losing any sort of resolution. And it's what allowed Sonia, our bookmaker, to be able to translate the image onto the cover. The image that I created is called Superwoman. It's about a woman who is juggling so many things in her life. She's juggling, like you guys can see here, her cell phone, listening to music. She's got her backpack. She's got her water bottle. She's jogging. She's got papers coming out of her bag. She's pushing a stroller with a baby in it. So it's about how women do so much to keep things going. And this particular woman, she could be the mother of the child, she could be the aunt, she could be a sister, she could be a babysitter, she could take on many different roles depending upon the context. If there's any part of the piece that's my favorite, it's probably the movement that's happening in it. She definitely looks like she's moving, she's jogging, she's running, she is moving very quick through life, and it just shows the fast-paced idea behind the way women live in today's world. And this piece is a little bit different from the other types of work of art that I do. I do highly detailed illustrations. Usually I do them traditionally. So I do other stuff digitally. I do a lot of vector design on my own for things like t-shirts and logos, and like we did here for the cover illustration. But it takes a different skill set to be able to do it. Same conceptual principles, and it's definitely very stylistic. So you can tell, even though it's vector illustration side by side with my traditional. What I do on a day-to-day basis with my illustration work is I work traditionally and I work with markers. So you could see that here in one of the pieces that I did for the illustration portion of the Labor of Love folio. But you can't tell, even though this is traditional and this is vector design, that stylistically it still looks like my work. And that's something that I strive very hard to do, is to make, whether I'm working in a traditional illustration, I'm working in vector design, I'm working in digital illustration, or I'm doing any sort of painting, that it always looks like it's my hand that's creating the artwork.
Anna Sue, could you talk a little bit about your inspiration for using the music stands to display these?
Okay, so one of the things with the music, for me, the pages are in conversation. These are Sylvia's pages speaking to one another about, one of her bits of text is what love got to do with it. Do you want me to keep talking even though there's?
I've already done my bit.
Okay, and so she has what love got to do with it as part of the text that you can read. Also, the Ladies' Home Journal and Better Homes and Gardens became dialogue between the pages. And so also the other bit of text that's pulled from the pages is, "Can you hear me now?" And to me, the Wound of Christ looks both like a vagina and a mouth. And so as part of so I used her text that I could read from the two pages as if they were speaking to one another about women's condition. And I also used some hand motions that were weaving and cutting, and also then just placing them in front of my body as a mouth and a vagina, as part of the conversation that that page was having. The reason I chose the music stands was because the conversation seems very like music, both when I was shuffling pages to see what performance order I would use, they would get into all these conversations that seemed musical to me, and I like bits of text. And so I have worked with musicians a lot, and I actually love music stands also as a piece of hardware. Just like the grocery cart has been a recurring piece of hardware in my performances. And so when I look around my studio, those are things that jump out, and it's like, I'm going to use these again and again. And so it felt like, to use the stands, it was both, practically speaking, a good height for them to talk to one another and for me to manipulate and get all the way around each one. And so that's the choice of music stands. And also they look really beautiful. Kimberly and I put them on as a alternate display. If the cart display was something that wasn't going to work in a particular physical space, the music stand display might be something as opposed to a conventional wall display or pedestals. I actually love building with the pages. They're archival and they're somewhat fragile, so you have to pick and choose how you're going to work with them and assemble them and keep them safe.
Well, thank you very much. I really love the visuals that they show on the music stand, so I appreciate that. Sorry, apologies for the interruption. Go ahead, Jessica.
And I work with an idea and a narrative to begin with. So once the organization was discussing issues around labors of love and what was paid for and what was not, I began to think of when those discussions were first becoming a part of my consciousness, which was 50 years ago when I was 16. And so my work tends to be very semiotic. So I thought, go back to the women's magazines that I remember growing up with, that the people around me would talk about. So I basically took color copies from the pages of Good Housekeeping and Family Circle in 1972, and mixed those with the other huge influence in my upbringing, which was Protestant Christianity. And I decided that the best way to represent that was with one of the wounds of Christ, particularly the one from the book of the Bonnie de Luxembourg image, because it has such a visual double entendre that I find it a compelling image, and I never think of Christ whenever I see it. I think of other things. So I decided, in looking at these magazines and pulling out the imagery, that the narrative structure I find most compelling and complex for going through this level of discussion is putting something in a grid form that, instead of creating clarity, ends up creating more confusion. So I shredded the pages after I made color combinations that I liked. I shredded the pages and then wove them together. And I did this because a weave is an act that is supposed to create containment and clarity. And when weaving market structures and ideas, particularly from print medium, you get something I think a little bit more articulates how I feel in my 60s, which is, I don't know why I'm conscious, and I don't know why things happen, and I don't know why people become so righteous about ideas when there is so much diversity and so much difference in our own species and in the things around us. Similar to my work only because I start with a narrative and a set of semiotics. Because I begin that way, every single problem that I'm solving will be dictated to me by what material I think articulates the idea that I'm trying to articulate for a conversation with a viewer. And how this has anything to do with how I live the rest of my life, I adore art and the making of objects. But I am not one of the most disciplined people in production that I have met. I liked how formal they ended up looking, because usually as a conceptual artist or someone working with semiotics, you, well, the older I get, the less I'm willing to sacrifice the formal beauty of something. But the fact that these, I kept making them because they wouldn't look the way that I thought, oh, the next one could be better. So I ended up actually with about a dozen of these. And these are the ones that ended up in the show.
So this work of Patty's is really phenomenal. Can anyone read her statement? Are y'all able to read it? Okay. Jessica, will you pause it and I can read it out so that people can hear what she had to say?
Yep, I just got it paused.
Okay, thank you. So her statement says, timeline is made up of threaded French knots, an embroidery technique learned as a young mother making clothes for her children. When she returned to full-time art practice in her late 40s, much of her work adhered to an underlying theme, exploring obstacles that female artists face. Like scarification, the knots in timeline represent the markings of memories and necessary, difficult choices within the lifespan of a woman. And Patty is one of our member artists from Birmingham, Alabama.
Patty had made 2 images for this series. So they represent her timeline in like a long duration. The second set of images is by one of our member artists. Her name is Cynthia, and she's local here to Huntsville with us. And she also did 2 images. And we have her statement as well. So Cynthia, for her statement, was saying, I believe fiction is a shortcut to truth. I'm compelled to manufacture fictional vignettes from a fusion of orphan vintage photographs collaged with contemporary digital images, hard marbled paper, beeswax, Damar resin, and, which is an encaustic medium, paint, ink, and other mixed media materials to investigate and attempt some understanding of the complex and absurdity of the world we live in. I'm especially interested in exploring the socio and physiological aspects of humanity, including issues of gender role, the transitory nature of life, and the similarities between the human brain and the fictions both humans and technology create. I consider myself a visual narrator, telling stories through several artistic mediums.
Rachel Lackey is one of our member artists from Huntsville, and she took this photo on a family trip that she was on. I couldn't get over the locks on the outside of the doors.
That was something when we were curating all of these pieces that we found very interesting. And it was definitely a conversation we had during the selection process about the locks on the doors. Okay, to like put a voice to Rachel's statement. When I saw the prospect of for this show, I so laughed at the irony, the perfect encapsulation of my situation, and yet I thought the very reason it will be impossible for me to participate. On the night of the submission deadline, I lay with my that's just a little blurry. I lay with my I said I lay with my arm going numb under my infant, thinking how much I would love
to enter this show, but I can't even find the time to take care of my own basic needs. I suddenly remembered this image I had captured a few years earlier. Coincidental symbolism that would seem overly contrived had I not simply stumbled across this in real life, which is what we're all doing.
Says, I spend my entire day accommodating others. I go to bed with my infant and nurse her throughout the night, then get up. So when she wakes in the morning, she gets us both ready and bring her with me to work. So she goes on to talk about like her day and what it's like caring for her job and her infant, and how she's struggling just to like take care of herself, take care of job, take care of her child, and trying to find the balance amongst everything.
She built it brick by brick by brick. Try to catch the brass ring. She built a brick by brick by
She's
brick.
building brick by brick
by
by brick. Try to catch the brass ring.
She built it.
She's trying to build brick by brick by brick.
By brick.
Try to catch the brass ring.
And I did this piece, which is untitled, for the Labor of Love folio. It is a color pencil drawing with metal things. That's what I call it. It's definitely a reflection of me because I like to draw and I like junk, and so this is the combination. This is what comes from drawing. And I work sculptural pieces, not necessarily just 2D pieces. The fact that the drawings, that's generally what I like the best, is the actual physical drawing, and it's architectural, which I like that as well. That's probably my favorite part. Well, I guess as stated, my normal art practice is to take things that people don't traditionally think of combining together, and I combine them together, whether it's a drawing in metal things or it's site-specific art installations. And that's a challenge. It's not easy to make it work. You know, you can take something that has another function and redefine it, and and it to be successful and good in your mind is difficult, but I do like it. So, now just in general, I can't imagine doing anything else other than what I do, and it is so a part of me. It's hard to even define that there is a distinction between your art practice and your daily life, you know. It's almost like, do you breathe, you know? Well, when do you breathe? Well, I breathe every day, so that's probably it.
And down will come baby, cradle and all.
I'm Kimberly Hart, and my piece is Woman, Child, Man for the Labor of Love portfolio. This started off, I'm working textiles mainly now, and this piece is very similar to the work I do now. It's a patchwork of recycled, repainted, repurposed clothing with photographs of my family when I was very small. My mom, my dad, and my brother printed over the top of the pieces of fabric and stitched together. My favorite part of this piece was really how well and easy it came together, I guess, the conceptual part, because it started off, I had a hard time getting started, and then it just sort of came to me, and I was really excited how it fell together. And the very last piece that I did that made it, I feel like made it very cohesive, is the velvet imagery of the mother and child being held over the whole entire piece. I'm using very similar materials, very similar process, because my work is very process driven. So it was kind of nice to be able to just do a continuation of the work I'm working on instead of having to reconceptualize something just for this particular show. In art practice, I try to do something every day to have the habit and routine. So I think it's really, it helps me be more creative if I have a routine and I keep my work going. And because it is process driven, I can make 3 or 4 pieces in one day and then think about them over a period of time until they coalesce into what I'm wanting, the direction I'm wanting to go.
The harder she works, the better she looks. I'm so tired of this. But the harder she works, the better she looks. I'm so tired of this. The harder she works, the better she looks. I'm so tired of this. Women's work is worth gold. 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 Women's work is worth gold.
Beverly, would you care to talk about your piece since you are here?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I just responded in a very similar way to a few of the other participants. I'm 61 and I was brought up on those idealized June Cleaver images cleaning her house in pearls. And then when I became an adult woman and realized that was all a myth. So my contribution is just from the nuts and bolts of our everyday life as women, but then how the media fed us a myth. And that's it.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Work-life balance. Work-life balance. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Just wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Just wait a minute.
Mimi Boston is a wonderfully talented printmaker, one of our members in Birmingham. She is responsible for the Paperworkers Local down there, which is a really talented group of artists from that Birmingham area. And I will read her statement to give Jessica a little bit of a break. Mimi says, Mimi Boston makes prints using several different methods: reduction wood blocks and mokuhanga. I hope that I am pronouncing that correctly. It's a Japanese wood block, are the methods in which she is now working, but she also loves the spontaneity of monotypes. Her inspiration is usually from nature, especially trees and sometimes landscapes. Some of her prints are abstract, most of them are representational. Mimi Boston majored in art history and enjoyed a financial career before taking extensive printmaking classes at Anderson Ranch, Penland, at Arrowmont, at the Torpedo Factory, the Incubator Press, and the Mars Printmaking Studio. She's one of the founding members of Paperworkers Local in Birmingham, Alabama. She grew up in Virginia and has lived many places and is pleased to be settled in her chosen hometown of Birmingham.
The piece I created is called Unpaid Timestamps. I carved out linoleum stamps of an hour, and each hour is representative of time that I spent working as an artist. So I work full-time at a credit union. I also play volleyball 5 days a week. I love to be a plant mom. And so the time that I dedicate to being an artist is in all the little nooks and crannies in between all of that. And I don't pay myself for that. I would love to be a full-time artist one day, but right now, like I said, I find find any available time, and that's when I focus on my art practice. And because I don't pay myself, that's where I got the title of unpaid timestamps. The time that I spend working in my studio, the time that I volunteer to help other artists, or just being at art events, all of that is unpaid for me. So I wanted to represent for a duration of time, I think just over a month, every hour that I worked on my art practice. And so each of those hours is represented with a single stamp. I think my favorite part about the piece is creating the stamp itself. That is a new practice for me. I typically draw and paint, and I only recently got into doing linoleum stamps. And creating the stamp itself was fun and interesting. The piece itself was kind of challenging for me because it is so different from my typical art. I do storm paintings and drawings. And so I really wanted to create something that you could tell was a Corinne Nicole piece, but I was definitely challenged by the subject matter itself and how I could make it look like something that I created. Obviously, I couldn't do a swarm of birds to represent that. So instead, I wanted to create a swarm of timestamps. My art practice, I have to find those nooks and crannies of time that I have. It used to bother me a lot that I was not a full-time artist and that I had these other passions. For example, playing volleyball is a huge passion of mine, so I dedicate a lot of time to playing volleyball, and I used to make myself feel guilty about that I had these other interests, that I was good at my full-time job, and I did enjoy that steady income. And so I used to kind of beat myself up for not having a full-time art practice or not dedicating more time to my art practice. But as I've gotten older and spent more time really embracing myself and who I am and acknowledging that I'm more than just an artist, I've become more okay with the fact that I do save my art practice for whenever I do have that time. And obviously when I have deadlines, I dedicate more time to it, but it's kind of, it squeezes in right now.
I think Anna Sue had wanted to read the next statement.
Okay, this is Anna Sue, the artist statement. For me, art is an escape to help deal with everyday reality. I created my art based on my emotions, and what media I work in on any given day depends on those emotions. I also allow music to guide those emotions and my hands. Music is the biggest and best tool in my art bag. As I escape from reality, I will enable the music to guide me into creating messages that will help to aid in mental health awareness. I hope my art allows others to escape as well, and if just for a moment.
home. The hamper's full. The closet is empty. She does the laundry. She comes home. The hamper is full. Closet is empty. She does the laundry.
In modern day America, most households can't survive without all of its adults entering the workforce in some capacity. But that leaves cooking, cleaning, caring for children and pets still to be done. Although a shift towards the equal sharing of household responsibilities is happening, it still remains for many that the women can be found working a double day to ensure their family needs are met at home.
Yeah.
Rip! Oh no. That's okay. Rip! Oh no. That's okay. Rip! Oh no. That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Pick up the pieces. Stitch a new path. 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 Just breathe. Layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. Just breathe.
So hi, my name is Amanda Banks. I made this untitled piece for Labor of Love. This piece speaks to the labor that we do to care for ourselves as women, especially those of us who have gone through domestic violence situations. A lot of times, you know, the the labor that we perform for others, it definitely goes unseen. But I think that labor that we perform for ourselves is even more hidden. And I really wanted to make this piece about that self-care and that labor of love that keeps us moving forward day to day. It kind of is the whole thing. It's hard for me to see it as individual pieces at this point. I really love the fabric that I chose to embroider onto and embellish. It's actually a cloth that I use when I am healing from tattoos. A lot of times they get really gross and you have to make sure that you keep the skin moisturized and healthy so that it will heal properly. And the one way that I did that was very carefully wrapping it every night before I went to bed in these cotton towels. And I love the way that the tattoo stained the cloth. So even after it was washed and prepared for mounting on this canvas, it still retained that pattern of healing and growth, which I really love. All of the work that I create is made from found objects, natural materials, things around in my environment. I'm kind of like a magpie. If it's shiny, I pick it up and I take it home and I make something with it. And this piece really is a collection of all of the happy little things that I found just going through life. And it has to do with a lot of like themes of like caring and being a mom and taking care of the people around you. And a lot of my work has those themes interwoven in it. For me, it's everything. I am a full-time artist. I'm very fortunate that I get to be able to pursue my art full-time. I eat and breathe and sleep art. Yeah, that's it. It's my life.
And this piece from Sarah Garden Armstrong, who is one of our Birmingham members.
Okay, Sarah Garden Armstrong. A woman's world has always been about layering time. In my career, I have emphasized both layering and the passage of time, struggling to persevere in the art world. Living in New York City in the 80s, I experienced a cultural upheaval with many gains by female artists. The disparities are still huge between men and women, and we still need to push for change. My work has always been a balance between creativity, survival, layering chance, and change as I explore the possibilities and push the boundaries. You want to just keep me on here for Heather? Okay. My work explores the complexity of my relationship with the physical body, skin and cloth that covers it, while expressing a larger cultural concepts of gender, domesticity, and craft. By cultivating a sensitivity to materials and an attentiveness to narrative, I manipulate hand-dyed textiles, creating meaning through sculpted layers, openings, and folds. My work frequently highlights themes of acceptance and rejection, drawing attention to both the hidden and the exposed. When I was working between Amanda's and Heather's and Sarah's in the performance, it felt like Amanda had the difficulties of tearing it up and the ripping. And then with Heather's, I was rolling those scraps together and putting them and making that road with the scraps that kind of came from Amanda's, and also speaking to the layers that were built into Sarah's. So this is a puppet page, and so it's got 3 layers. The puppet layer can escape and visit other pages. And this is the work, this is the page that I did. And it's meant as a shadow puppet character. And I am using a flashlight to make a little shadow with it in some of the performance.
I'm Anna Sue Courtney, and I'm an arts instigator. I'm primarily a puppeteer. My favorite part of the page is the layers that it comes in. It has a back layer with passages that's on paper. It has a center transparent layer, and the top layer actually is transparent, but also removable, so that it can become its own type of puppet character. So when I was working on it, there are things that recur in my work again and again. One are passageways and staircases, and also a certain amount of nod to the ancestors and political activity. So the moths are the ancestor spirits. The figure is a character that's based on one of the figures from a civil rights piece that I had, is a martyr from the Birmingham Children's Crusade. And the center layer is a kind of quilt layer pattern that's called the Courthouse Steps by the G-Spin quilt makers. And so those layers of political activity, and I'm an ancient feminist as well. Part of the thing that we're still doing today, we're still marching up the courthouse steps. We're still trying to get rights for women. All those things have been a lifetime struggle. And I'm committed to continuing those. So that is how my work and life fit together. When I came up with the Labor of Love project, the idea was that the pages would speak with one another. And so they're in conversation with one another. And everything that happens to me happens through my body. And so I wanted to primarily use movement, particularly my hands, naked hands, and my body to translate some of the images in the folio into performance. And you'll see some of that later on in the show. Thanks. Let's make a quilt. A quilt for connection. A quilt for protection. Quilt is connection. Cool is protection. Cool is connection. Is protection.
Milani Robinson. I am a potter. I've been making pottery for about 40 years. I have great pleasure being part of this project, the labor of love. It was very challenging for me to do some of my ideas in two-dimensional form. I have never do a linoleum cut, so that was very exciting to do something new. And I knew that I needed to kind of tie together the drawing and design that I was planning on doing with my work in clay. So I decided to print this with clay. So I did the linoleum cup and covered it with a slip and then printed it in the paper. Well, I think the favorite part that I came up with in the whole project was seeing the designs that I usually do in a three-dimensional way on a flat surface. So it was pretty much the whole process that is my favorite. You know, working on the linoleum and then trying to put the designs that I usually do on my clay into the linoleum cup. I think that's pretty much what I got a lot out of. This is very engaging, is very rewarding. So I think the relation between both of them is obviously the surface design of my thoughts, trying to put it into the two-dimensional form. And it just happened kind of naturally. And it's just a process that it just melts together with all that I do. You know, it's just a way of life. Doing this is not very much different from everything else that I do. Well, it's kind of intertwined with my life. You know, going to my studio or being home is pretty much about the same thing. It's just a connection there of both places. So my creativity is just like a regular life practice, you know. I don't see much difference on me throwing a pot and making a pot than me being in the kitchen fixing something to eat. You know, it's a set of mine, and it's just the activity that my creativity tells me to do. And I get as much pleasure as doing this as doing this. You know, I've been working in Alabama for a long time. I'm originally from Mexico City, and I have been very impressed with the fabric and the quilt making traditions of the South. And since about 15 years ago, I have started making quilts too. And that was a process that came up really easy. My pottery, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it's very pattern oriented, repetition, pattern. The pots are always divided in 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever number. And that's pretty much what you do with quilting. You know, you have patterns, you have blocks, and you have repetition. So moving from clay into making quilts was something that went really easy. I have always sewn, but I have never done quilts. So after taking a class about 15 years ago, I got really hooked. I have a very addictive personality. You know, when I like something, I just can't let it go. I am just really excited to be part of the Women Caucus on Arts. I think it's a great group of people, and I look forward to meeting more of them, of the members, and actually make it a strong, positive, and nurturing group of people, because I think we all need that.
In this work, and using this work as a platform for labor issues, I see the relationship between women and labor and ecological status. The burdens of necessary interdependent relationships are a circle, a wheel, concentric circles of time. The work that women are immersed in is often sidelined by contemporary expectations of production, yet we are vital to a thriving society. These images are isometric projections made through a 3D rendering software laser etched on watercolor paper and painted. These images discuss our web of interconnectivity of labor and time spent on those around us. Each study marks time and becomes a value study of the spaces women occupy.
Guys, sorry, bear with me. The video decided to glitch.
Since we are coming up on time, do we want to go over the last two artworks as stills?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, just to be on the safe side.
All right, if you'll give me 1 second, I will share my screen with everyone one more time.
So my interview was the one that came up next on the video, and I did 2 pieces for our project, and both of them are a story that I'm telling about my particular labor of love. of course, like I decided to go about this in a different way. I wanted to go about it in not necessarily like a way of my labor of love being my job, because I work as a full-time artist. So like my artwork, and I'm also a teaching artist. So the artwork that I do and the things that I teach and the students I work with are, you know, absolutely a part of my labor of love and my passion. But for me, I wanted to go, like I said, a slightly different direction, and to talk about the relationship that I have with my dog. I have a very large white fluffy dog. She is a Great Pyrenees, and she requires, well, because of all that fur, she requires quite a bit of care. So on a regular basis, I have to groom her. And if I don't groom her, the hair gets everywhere, which is what the first piece is about. It shows all of the tools that I'm using to take care of her. It shows like the hair just scattered everywhere. And by the time I get to the second piece, which is the second part of the story, it's the aftermath of me actually taking the time to groom this very large animal of mine. So it actually, it was purposefully done to look like nothing had actually changed. So, and honestly, like I took that from a real photograph that I took. So, so my dog has so much hair on her that even though I took off this massive amount of hair that could really make like its own dog on its own, it still looked like there was very little change in what I actually did to perform the grooming task. And then, Anna Sue, would you mind reading the statement for Tara and explaining a little bit about her piece? Hers was special because it has both a front and a back.
Considering your words and your point of view. Do I need to start over? Speak slowly, please. I am listening. I am carefully considering your words and your point of view. What and whom do you value? I vow to learn and grow from our experience together. I'm a visual artist concentrating in experimental photography, handmade paper, collage, and book art. My portraits aim to expand human dignity, and my collage assemblages illuminate exemplary human beings and their directives for daily living. The relevance of the natural world intersects with all my work. My approach to portraiture and photography is simple and low tech. The process of looking through the lens quite literally narrows focus and invites concentrated gazing and listening. I'm more engaged with my subject, and there are less technical interruptions. I enjoy the intensity of unknown and especially love often unexpected and surprising outcomes of using film. I'm extremely interested in the truth a candid can offer. I like to think about the creation of music, notably jazz, where creativity is born of intuition, improvisation, spontaneity, and experimentation. I work with my partner Lou to design and build frames using ethnically sourced wood from Birmingham area and frames using woodworking machinery and antique framing. My most recent works are meditations with threads stitched onto handmade papers, photographs, old bed linens. Slowly, Please is my personal collection, souvenirs from 25 years of navel gazing and striving to do what's right. Slowly, please.
Thank you, Anna Sue. And that is our folio, Labor of Love. If anyone would like to learn more or view some of our other exhibitions that we've done, I'm putting our web address in the chat. And there we have exhibitions going all the way back to the start in 2015. So you'll get to see some additional work that we've done. Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts before we go?
Yeah, so this particular project, it's meant to be something that's ongoing. It's a project where the folio itself, it is bound into that book that Sonia was talking about that she made special for our folio. So it's meant to travel. So we can set it up in multiple different formats. So as you saw, like Anna Sue took it and she was able to make both a sculptural installation and she was able to make it into a performance. And it's also meant to be shown like she showed on the music stands, or we've been able to put it up on the wall. The idea is that this folio can travel from place to place to place, and it can transform into many different forms of installation work, depending upon what it is that the site needs. So we're working on taking the folio, and we had one show back in January, February, and this was actually a piece that was a part of a larger show that we did called Shelter. So we were able to have like a mini show within a larger show, which was pretty cool to see. So now we're in the process of booking some various different things to have this shown in other areas. So Anna Sue and I are both instructors at our local museum, at the Huntsville Museum of Art. And coming up, we do these things at the museum called it's 5 after 5. So you can get into the museum for $5 and experience all of the exhibits. And sometimes they do demonstrations and performances that people can come and watch live. So we're still working on solidifying the date, but it's going to be here in the near future, and we're going to be able to have that sculptural installation portion that you guys saw, and Anna Sue is going to perform it. We're also looking at booking it at some universities and some other galleries, and we're getting, like, we had all of the artists come out that were willing to come out and speak for the video. We're also having the artists come out and doing lectures and workshops that are involved with the folio. And something that I had a discussion with our members fairly recently was how speaking actually becomes a big part of what we end up doing as artists, which is something that we don't actually realize when we go into this field. So I explained to them about how you can have like a speaking section to your resume, and this would be a way to start adding some things to that. So this folio is definitely not just like a one exhibition and done. And the idea too is that we can maybe get other chapters to make folios of their own, and we can exchange them. So like in their area, they can show our folio, and in our area, we can have an exhibition for them and to be able to reach other states and get more exposure. So this is definitely, like you guys were saying, a very, very flexible project. And I'm glad that we were able to show it to everyone.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful, very interesting to me. I love how, like I said in the chat, I love how flexible it was. I love the idea of other chapters also doing folios and chapter exchange. And I'd like to point out that we do have money for inter-chapter activities. So if two chapters would like to work together on a project, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it can help pay for shipping. It's $100 that would go to each chapter, and you can apply for that through the WCA website. And we have, I think $600 or $700 a year dedicated to those inter-chapter exchanges, and it's rare that we spend all that money. So please consider that if you want to, if other chapters are interested in doing this, apply for those funds. But speaking to the shipping, I mean, one of the things I love about this too is that it can't cost that much to ship it to another place. I think it's genius. I mean, we all know how much it costs to ship our work, and to have an exhibition like this is really, I love the 3 components. It can be the artist book. It can be displayed very simply on stands or probably pinned to walls. Is we have a way to do that so that it doesn't damage the work?
So yes, it can definitely be pinned to walls. In fact, something that you guys didn't see in the folio is in the back of the book. We have like an area where we've put like, we're putting like little pins and like string and stuff so that it can be hung to a wall. And we also compiled a flash drive so that whoever it is that we send this folio off to can just plug in the flash drive. They'll have access to like pre-made like social media posts. They'll have access to all of the artist CVs, all of their artist statements, still images of the work. Like this video will also go on there. The video itself was a massive undertaking. So that like, and we'll be able to break that up too, like into clips. So again, like it's got all of the components for it so that when it travels, there's not any extra work that has to be done. And if someone, say in a different state, wants to know what artist did that piece and how can I contact them, their CV is right there on the flash drive and they can reach out to them.
Oh, well done. Well done. That's
Our
brilliant.
exhibitions team is amazing. These women are incredible.
Yeah, this is amazing, really.
Yeah.
And opens a lot of possibilities for other chapters to do similar. I mean, similar sorts of projects. To do a national project can very easily be shipped around the country to all sorts of different venues. Yeah, this is very inspiring. And I really, like I said in the chat, I really also enjoyed listening to all the different artists' art practices, because it just shows how different we all work. There's not one way for each artist to do their work. I was especially taken by Karina, who, you know, was somewhat apologetic for not dedicating her whole life to her art, but yet she is able to put it in the nooks and crannies of our life. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing on a daily basis. So that was very inspiring to me. Does anyone have any questions before we end?
I had a question for Jessica. I was at a Photo Midwest meeting this morning and there was a long discussion about style. And you mentioned that even when you change your process or your method, you aim to have a recognizable style. And I wondered if you would be willing to talk a little bit about what characteristics of the work or what aspects of the work communicate your style.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting for me because it's not something that I developed consciously. And I actually, like, I teach a lot and I work with a lot of various different age groups, and constantly, no matter what age group I'm working with, my students come to me and they say, I want my style. I want my unique style. And it's something that they're pushing so hard for because they want it to be the way that they use their voice. It's a way for them to make themselves known and stand out from someone else. And it can be incredibly difficult to do that, especially when you force it. So for me, I never tried to force what I do for my work. I never tried to force my style. And that's something that I try to explain to all of my students as they go through this process. I heavily studied realism and I heavily studied cartooning at the same time. And somewhere along the way, they kind of melded and became like my own style. So for my work, I strived very hard to have clean lines. And in fact, I didn't do that intentionally at first. I actually did a whole lot of work studying hand lettering and calligraphy. And it was my college art teacher that he like almost beat it into us that we had to have a steady hand. We had to have a smooth hand if we were going to do hand lettering. You needed to be able to have clean lines. And who knew that like all these years later that was going to be what translated into my illustrations. So because I love cartooning too, I like line work. And so one of the things that I strive to do is to make sure that every part of my piece can stand alone. So the pencil portion can stand alone, the inked version can stand alone, the colored version can stand alone. So you can see each of the individual parts and break down the process. So the actual inking portion, I use a variation of thin and thick lines to show depth as well as closeness. And I'll also play around with black lines versus like cool gray lines versus warm gray lines. That way I can show depth just with line and show form. So then from there, I go into color, and I'm very big into color theory. So I apply like a very smooth gradation of color, which is meant to enhance the line work. So all of that, when I jump from medium to medium to medium, I'm still applying the same concepts, if that makes sense. And those concepts, even though I didn't strive to make them happen, I ended up being told by people when I did show after show after show, oh, I know that's yours. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. I didn't realize that you could tell that. And then it really just developed naturally. And I learned through teaching how to apply that in the various different medium. So it always looks like I was saying in one of the interviews you guys actually saw, that I try very hard now to make sure that it's cohesive between style to style to style.
Very well explained. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the Alabama chapter again for this wonderful contribution. It's really, really appreciated. Thank you for sharing it. I do think it's very inspiring.
I totally agree. Thank you so much for pulling this all together.
Well, thank you all for being here. We're excited to share it with you, and please keep an eye out on it and for all the developments that can come from this project. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
You too. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone who worked on the project.
Yes.
Thanks, bye.